My name's Dr. Vanessa Lapointe. I'm a psychologist, parenting educator, and also a mom to two growing children. Oftentimes, as big people, whether we be parents, teachers, grandparents, childcare providers, whatever our role is as a big person, we wonder what's going on with kids that they bite and that they hit and that they shove. And sometimes we even get worried that we're growing up violent children, that they're biting and hitting and shoving. But the truth of the matter is that children actually have to bite and hit and shove. They have no way around managing their emotions when their brains are still maturing, still developing, and still coming online. In fact, the science of child development shows us that it typically isn't until somewhere between 5 to 7 years that most children will be able to wrangle some control over those sorts of behaviors and keep their emotions in check enough that they don't bubble out of them with these kinds of aggressive outbursts. However, for very intense and sensitive children, you might find that it's somewhere closer to 10 to 12 years of age before they're able to start hanging on to especially their hits and their shoves in moments of intensified emotion. Now, the reason that this is all happening is basically to do with the flow of child development. When you have very young children, typically around 2 years of age and under, all they have available to them when something doesn't go the way that they wanted is to get mad. They actually neurologically have no other capacity for moving through that emotion other than to let the frustration settle in and come out of them in whatever way it needs to come out of them. And because kids are so physical and they're really regulating in very physical ways when they're young, the way that they'll often flow into that was with some kind of physical reaction. So the hits and the bites and the shoves will start to come out of them very quickly at that point. Somewhere around age 2 or 3 years of age, kids will flow into the next stage of development where they're able to take this frustration and this anger and begin to soften it into a little bit of sadness. And so you'll see kids typically when something doesn't work out or go their way, they'll have that first swell of frustration and anger, and then particularly in the presence of a compassionate caregiver or parent who responds with empathy and with kindness, they'll be able to move through the anger and the upset to a softer space of feeling sad that it didn't work out rather than mad that it didn't work out. Here is the stage where you're still going to see hits and bites and shoving, but you will start to see these taper off. And as the child comes to that soft place of sadness, they're going to become increasingly aware of how their interactions impact the people around them and the social acceptability of those interactions. And so they're actually, from somewhere inside, going to begin to desire to kind of curb some of those behaviors just naturally and all by themselves. And then as your child continues to grow and develop, they eventually, and this lives in the frontal cortex, the prefrontal cortex, which is sort of the last part of the brain that's going to come online for your children, they will eventually start to be able to manage their emotions a little bit more independently, that they'll become increasingly capable of self-regulation. And as this stage settles in, typically around 5 to 7 years of age with lower level emotions, unless you have an intense and sensitive child, as I mentioned, which will be a little bit older, 10 to 12 years of age. As that settles in, then you'll really see that they're able to hang on to themselves, that these impulsive physical kinds of reactions will just naturally sort of fade off, and development will trudge along, and your child will continue to mature and blossom into the human being that they were intended to be.